Am I the a-hole for telling my cousin that she's the reason my husband and I have reconsidered adoption? I, 33 female, have had fertility issues for the past couple of years with my husband, 35 male. We went through with consultations, and while we had very promising results for treatment, the cost did give us pause. It wasn't that we couldn't afford it. We just weren't at the point yet where we were willing to pay. I discussed it with my husband and we were both fine with the idea of adopting. My cousin Tiffany, 25 female, is adopted, and she supported our choice in looking into it. However, this was a couple of years back. And during that time, Tiffany was reunited with her birth parents, and she's been acting pretty hurtful to my aunt and uncle since then. She keeps making posts about how happy she is to know where she comes from, and is happy about being reunited with her real family. She even talked about having her birth father walk her down the aisle as a chance to make up for lost time. Obviously, my uncle was very hurt about this, but when he voiced it, Tiffany got defensive. She called my uncle selfish, how this was about her, and that he knew what he signed up for when raising someone else's kid. Then before the pandemic hit, Tiffany moved closer to where her bi mother lived, so they could make up for lost time. And Tiffany kept making post after post about all the fun she was having meeting relatives, and how she called/video chatted with each of her bi parents multiple times a week. Meanwhile, she barely texted back my uncle and aunt once a month. I could tell how heartbroken my aunt and uncle were, but tried to give Tiffany her space, and a few times they said anything, she accused them of being selfish and unsupportive. I think the biggest thing that broke them was when Tiffany promised to come by for my aunt's birthday. COVID restrictions were lifted, and was even given the money to travel to them, but then never showed up. She called literally the day before to say that her bi mom had an emergency, so she wasn't going to make it, but didn't give back the money. I am completely disgusted by Tiffany's behavior, and while I haven't completely ruled out adoption entirely, I did want to give medical-assisted conception a try. My husband supported this, and we are now currently expecting. After we made our announcement, Tiffany messaged me asking why I would spend thousands on creating a child when I could help one who already existed. I tried to play it off, but Tiffany kept pressing, and calling me a bad person when there are so many children who desperately need a home and overpopulation. It got to the point where she was pissing me off, and I just came clean and said that her behavior towards the people who loved and raised her was the reason. Tiffany got really upset, but I didn't care. However, her parents are now starting to say that I was wrong, so am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I'll say it loudly every time. If you insist on pushing people past a polite answer, you may get an answer you don't like. You have only yourself to blame if the truth hurts you then. Agreed. Not the a-hole. People need to learn to read a room. And if you keep pushing for a different answer than the one given, you need to be prepared to have some hard truth tossed in your face. 99% of the time when people are being polite and giving vague answers, it's for your own good, and just go with that. Seriously, when people learn that you stick your head in the lion's mouth, you can't expect them to pretend to be vegan. Not the a-hole. Your cousin is actually horrific. I'm adopted, and I would never, ever pull some crap like this. I'm sorry that she's such a selfish person, that she soured the idea of adoption for you. This was my thought. I feel really bad that adoption is tainted for them because it can be a wonderful thing. Just like having your own biological child, things can go wrong. But that doesn't mean it's always gonna be horrible. Still definitely not the a-hole. And I'm sorry they have to deal with a family member like this. Not the a-hole. Even though it wasn't a nice thing to say, you're still right. It's the truth. Why would you want to adopt a kid if they could end up like her? She's ungrateful and selfish. She abandoned a set of parents who love her and gave her a good life all these years for some people she barely knows, just because they're her real parents. I think her real parents are the ones who raised her and taught her everything she knows. She doesn't know her bio parents, and they could easily be a part of a cannibal cult. You were definitely in the right to say what you said. I'm wishing you good luck with the fertility situation. I'm hoping you're able to have a healthy child or adopt one who will love you forever. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to raise my new sibling? I am a 24-year-old woman who just finished my bachelor's degree and started my first professional job. I had a rough childhood growing up. My father was an alcoholic, and my mother didn't really want to be a mom. She was out partying all of the time. My sister is 16 now, and I feel like she's my kid. We were left alone for days, and even weeks at a time when I was growing up. My sister was much younger than me, so I took over the role of being a parent to her. I was the one who washed her hair and helped her with her homework and held her when she cried and made sure she had food to eat. My parents never did any of that for us. When I was 16, something happened at my parents' house that made me fear for both my safety and my sister's safety, so I moved out and took her with me. My parents didn't care. I got 2 part-time jobs, went to school, and raised my sister the best I could. We were really poor, but I would have given my life for her, still would, and she's a really good kid. A few years ago, my father died, and my mom remarried. The new husband is pretty much a carbon copy of my father. After my father's death, my mom reached out to me for the first time in years. She said she wanted to be back in my sister's life. I didn't really want to, but my sister wanted to, so I did it for her. At first it was okay, but my mom is back into D's, and her new husband is just as bad if not worse. The problem is my mom and her new husband had a little girl. She is 6 months old now, and apparently they're doing the same things that she and my dad did with me and my sister, leaving her alone for hours at a time. I was not aware of this, but I have to say I'm not surprised. Another relative reported her to CPS, and now they need to find a temporary home for my half-sister or she's going to be put in foster care. My mom suggested me, but I said I didn't want to raise another one of her kids. I understand that she's my half-sister, but I have pretty much raised myself and my sister, and I'm just tired. I am finally looking at a future where my sister will be going to college in 2 years, and I will finally have a life of my own. I have sacrificed so much for my sister, and I don't regret that at all. But I just want to have a life where I can be lazy for a bit if I want, and I can focus on just myself, instead of constantly caring for another human being. I've never had that chance before. My mom is livid, and saying that I'm a horrible person for not taking in my half-sister. She says it will be temporary until she gets her life cleaned up. But this woman has never had her life in order. I know if I take my half-sister, I will be raising yet another child, and I won't have a chance to live a life of my own until I'm over 40. I do feel awful about my half-sister ending up in foster care, and I do want to be a part of her life. I just don't want to be a parent to her. Am I the a-hole for saying no? Edited to add, I did try to shelter my other sister as much as possible about what was going on in our home. She was 7.5 when we moved out, so she doesn't remember a lot about what happened, and we weren't in contact with our mother until 2019. So I just kind of brushed off her questions and said that our parents weren't mentally well, and I thought we would be better on our own. I was really hopeful that things had changed, but I still kept a really close eye on what kind of contact I allowed them to have. I've supervised every in-person interaction they've had, for example. I did talk to her tonight and gave her the whole truth, and while she was upset to learn it, she definitely understands a lot more about what happened, and why we're not going to have contact with our mother anymore. As for the relative who reported her to CPS, she is not in the position to take on a baby due to a chronic health condition that is growing progressively worse. Not an a-hole. I love how she calls you horrible when she's the one not fit to be a parent. That is not your responsibility. You've already done more than enough. It's time to live your life. You probably should go back to no contact though. I feel like she's going to start bothering you about this. This pretty much sums up her relationship with me for most of my life. She never takes responsibility for anything, and it seriously drives me crazy. I've tried to shield my sister as much as I could from this mess, to the point that I omitted a lot of things that happened, and she can't remember since she was little when I moved out and took her with me. But we've sat down for a long talk, and I think she understands now why I was reluctant to get back in contact with our mother. I know she's upset about the situation, but I think she finally sees why I went no contact for years, and why it's a good idea to go back to that from now on. Maybe someday our mother will get her act together. I doubt it. But until then, no contact is the best and healthiest option. Your half-sister is young and cute enough to be adopted. Tell your mom to give her up since she wants another person to raise her. You are not a holoby. Parentification is a form of mistreatment, in which a child is forced to take on a parental role for their sibling. Your childhood was stolen from you, and now you're facing the prospect of having to relieve that trauma. You've shouldered a heavy burden for the better part of your life, and it's okay to feel that you can't do it all over again. After having had a role of primary provider and caregiver placed on you for so long, nobody can reasonably blame you for finally taking time to focus on your own emotional well-being. Your half-sister has been placed in a horrible situation, but putting yourself in another one wouldn't be healthy for either of you. Thank you. I really needed to read this. I haven't had a chance to go to therapy or work on my emotional baggage. I plan to in the future now that I have benefits and a steady income. But just having someone tell me that it's understandable to feel like I do Does make me feel like less of an awful person. Not a-hole. If it helps you to know this, a baby going into foster care with a chronically unfit parent is far more likely to be available for adoption while still young than that child would be if you take that baby first as family foster care. If you take the baby, the state kind of assumes that you are willing to do this as the largely unpaid babysitter for your mother for extended periods of time if and until she ever gets herself straight. If there are no family foster care options available, and the child goes directly into foster care, she is most likely to be placed with a family who is willing to do foster to adopt and is hoping to do foster to adopt. And the incentive on the part of the state is to follow the actual rules and guidelines for how long they have to make a permanent placement plan for this child. Which means, long story short, if you refuse to take the baby, she's far more likely to be adopted by another family. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents they should watch my brother if they won't replace the things he destroyed? I'm 16 female. I have a Nintendo Switch and a good few games and cartridge instead of installed on it because I bought it secondhand. Animal Crossing, Mario Kart, Mario Party, Just Dance 2020, and a few others. I also have a 2.5-year-old brother who is obsessed with the toilet, flushing it every chance he gets. Sometimes he puts some tissue down it to watch it go down. You can probably already tell where this is going. This morning, he was being really quiet, but the toilet was still flushing every few minutes, and he was giggling every few minutes. So we assumed he was fine and just playing with the toilet again. So, he came into the sitting room from the bathroom. Note, we live in a bungalow but it's quite big. And said, "Opie, look," and made me follow him to the bathroom, where the AC&H, Mario Kart, and Just Dance cases were empty the bathroom floor. I immediately asked him where he went and he pointed at the toilet and grinned. I went to my parents. Dad was working, work from home, and my mom was cooking dinner, and said he's just flushed my games down the toilet, one of which being my favorite. My mom just called him in and said that it was wrong and tried not to do it again and sent him to go play again. When I asked what about the games I've lost, my dad spoke up and suggested I save to get them back, and that they can't afford to replace them for me. I said in response to that, you should watch Brother better than if you weren't going to bother replacing what is ruined. They think I'm the a-hole for this, and I've been in my room sulking all day and being sad that I can't play Animal Crossing and won't get a new one anytime soon. Am I the a-hole? Not an a-hole. Flush your brother down the toilet. Then tell your parents they should save up for a new one since you can't afford to replace him right now. Lol, do you have a younger sibling, and was this something you fantasized about in the past? I'm so mad I want to downvote you, but you made me laugh. Dang it. Not an a-hole. Also, I'd refuse to watch him from this point on. Not your problem. Your parents are massive a-holes here. How often do they make you watch him? Do they pay you to watch them? Watching your brother is not your responsibility. Also, keep your bedroom door locked to keep him out even if you're not in your room. Also, don't leave your stuff around the house for him to get a hold of. I'd show them your post so they can read it, and the replies that will inevitably state that they are a-holes. They don't make me watch him very often, usually only once or twice a day. Since the pandemic started, they ask me to watch him while they go to the shop since he won't put a mask on for longer than half an hour yet. And neither parent drives, so it's 2 buses and an hour grocery run. I also can't lock my bedroom door. There's no key. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing to take my nephew in for a few days to give my sister a break? My sister's eldest son is 20 and has special needs. He's mentally and physically disabled, so everything needs to be done for him, including helping him walk around. Now that honestly wouldn't be a problem for me, 33 male, but the issue is his behavior. Because my sister gives him everything, he is very spoiled. He's practically glued to his tablet and watches videos all day long. Even when it's time to eat, change him, or get ready for bed, he will throw the biggest tantrums and throws things around until he gets his tablet back. Behaves awfully with my kids and has made my eldest cry on a couple occasions. Another major problem is on many occasions he will start watching adult stuffs on his tablet at full volume, even at family gatherings. It's happened a few times at my own house in front of my kids, 9 male and 6 female. And yet, another tantrum if you try to get him to watch something else. My sister claims she tries to put parental controls on his tablet, but he knows how to disable it. For these reasons, my family and I don't visit. You can see why I don't want to take on the responsibility of having him stay here with us for a few days, just because my sister says she and her husband need a break for a few days. They could get a caretaker for him if they wanted to, but they're too proud for that. I love my nephew, and physically taking care of him wouldn't be the problem. But I don't want him in my home with the way he behaves and makes my kids uncomfortable. Now my sister keeps saying I'm being a terrible brother/uncle who could be doing her a huge favor helping out with him. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You need to put your own children first. If they're able to afford a professional carer, then that should be what they do. It's not fair to place that pressure on family members. There are also facilities that will offer respite stays for 2 weeks to 30 days depending on their policy. You all should hold your ground. It's unfair to blame this on anyone in the family, but it's not their fault they need a break as it sounds complicated. Worsened by their choices or not, it's still a tough spot. Not an a-hole. Edited to include that COVID policies might complicate this now depending on your location status, but it is normally available. Not an a-hole. Especially because of the way he acts around the kids. It's completely understandable you don't want that in your home. The adult videos thing is so gross too. It really is. It has become more of a problem recently. Now it doesn't matter where they are, he will absolutely watch without a care.